What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Cultivating Conversations. I'm your host here, Farmer Jazz, bringing you straight up insights from innovators, entrepreneurs, and game changers out there making moves. But real quick, if you're loving the content, make sure you like, share, and hit the follow button. Your support helps keep these conversations cultivated. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Cultivating Conversations. It's your host here, Farmer Jazz. We're here with a good friend of mine, Dr. O. Dr. O, how you doing?
Man, I'm great, man. I'm feeling blessed and I'm grateful to be on your platform.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to have you here as well. Dr. O is a serial entrepreneur. You know, the doctor, don't let the doctor fool you because he's a man of many talents. First and foremost, can you give us a background on yourself, Dr. O?
Sure. So my name is Dr. O, but you can call me Ike. I am Nigerian and I met Jared at Northeastern University, where I graduated with a doctorate degree in pharmacy. And so I work as a pharmacist, but I also have other entrepreneurial endeavors. I've also started my own podcast called Ike's Inspiration, and I invest in real estate, and I also like to DJ. So I do all those stuff and handle different things. And I also have a YouTube channel called Sickle Cell with Dr. O, where I talk about sickle cell disease.
Nice, nice. So my next question is what inspired you to venture into multiple fields such as DJing, being a doctor, real estate, podcasting, business ownership?
Yeah, man. That's a great question. I'm pretty multifaceted, and God blessed me with the ability to learn. And I also am just an extremely curious person. So whenever there's an opportunity to learn new things, I always hop on it, especially if it feels right for me. And it's just constantly exploring myself and trying to discover what talents I'm good at and what I'm not good at. I also have ADHD, so I kind of have a tendency to pick new things up and then try new things. And I like to experiment with different skills and see what works for me and what doesn't.
I definitely can relate to picking up on a bunch of different skills and also the ADHD portion. You know, I feel like it's a superpower which allows you to, what other people consider chaos, you consider peace. It's just like,
Yeah.
always building, always growing on top of your skills. So, my next question I have here, how do you define your mission or purpose in all the different industries that you're involved in?
That's a great question. I believe my purpose in this world is to inspire. I love inspiring people, and I try to do it in multiple different platforms. And I also believe that I was put on this world to lead and to be a servant of God. So, whether it's through my YouTube channel or helping people at my pharmacist day job or getting a crowd together to DJ, um, do my best to put myself in leadership positions to ultimately inspire people.
Yeah, it sounds like you're of service in many different types of ways, just as the Bible tells us to be.
Yes.
Um, the Bible says, "He who sows sparingly, he who sows sparingly reaps sparingly, but he who
Yeah.
sows generously reaps generously." So it seems like you like to have your hand in many different places, not just for the benefits, but it seems like that benefit that you get um, is more of a societal one and more of like a spiritual one
Yes.
of building communities, building a vibe.
Yes. Yeah. And I used to be a little bit, I don't want to say insecure, but worried that, hey, how some people be like, oh, you're spreading yourself too thin. And then this often that quote, a jack of all trades is a master of none. But then people fail to say that second half, which is, but it's oftentimes better than none. So like I'd rather have a bunch of skills because from a bunch of different skills you kind of can learn from all different aspects of things, and ultimately it makes you a better person. You know.
Yeah, and it definitely you never lack of opportunities since you have so many skills. You always find a place that you can go exercise some of those skills. So
Yeah,
and
and
it also helps you not to be bored.
yeah, that too. It makes your life more creative. And whether I'm DJing, podcasting, creating content on YouTube, or working with pharmacists, honestly, at the end of the day, you're just dealing with people. Like you're just dealing with people, and you're serving people, and you're giving people an opportunity to make their day a little better through stuff that you're already good at. So that's really how I look at it.
Yeah. So my next question to you is, many people find it challenging to focus on one career path. How do you manage to excel in so many diverse areas that may seem unrelated?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And a lot of it has to go with time management. I'm really big on how I manage my time. And as an entrepreneur, I feel like you have to be strict with your time. So, working from home gives me the benefit of being able to focus on a job that helps me produce income and then focus on other all my other stuff. So I have like a Google Calendar, and in the Google Calendar, I set times from when I'm gonna do something. So, like for my podcast, I do a recording once a week and I post once a week, and then maybe for my YouTube channel, I post once a month on that YouTube channel. And I work out 3 times a week, but I'm very diligent and disciplined with all the activities I do. And I make sure to structure it throughout my day in a way that is sustainable for me. I realized like this is not sustainable for everybody, and you kind of have to know yourself to know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You know.
Yeah, that's definitely a good tip right there because I remember learning that in grade school when they had diagnosed me with ADHD, and it was because my binder was always like super disorganized. But I was never one that lacked in getting bad grades. It's just like
Yeah.
teachers would see my binder and get stressed out and get more anxiety than I would get looking at it. And what they taught me in my resource classes was just take some time out to organize, and taking that 30 minutes hour out of your day or out of your week to like kind of set the tone for the week, um kind of helps out in managing your time and making sure that you're allocating the right time, because with ADHD, if you don't have that structure there, you can get lost in the sauce and just get distracted by a bunch of things. But with a good structure of a schedule and keeping things organized, it seems like that helps you manage all these talents that you have,
Yeah.
and make sure that you're efficient with them.
Yeah, and some people, I don't know, I feel like society often paints ADHD in like a weird way where it's like there's like a negative connotation on it. I just figured out I had ADHD about like a couple months ago. And although that didn't necessarily change me as a person, it made me like a lot more aware of my certain tendencies. And it explained a lot about me. And it's like, okay, like instead of me complaining that I have ADHD, I'm just gonna embrace it and use it to my advantage. And one of the greatest positives about ADHD is that it allows you to like hyper focus on something. So once you're locked in into something, like you're locked in. And I realized with that hyper focus, it allows me to get certain things done really quickly or be really focused at whatever I'm doing at that particular time.
Yeah, that ability to hyper focus in it, I feel like it's for me, and I could see in you as well that it allows you to consume a lot of more, and a lot more knowledge, wisdom, and you
Yeah.
pick up on things faster. So like other people, it might take them like a year to pick up a trade or a skill, or read
Yeah.
a book or watch a movie, but you're just gonna be locked in,
Yeah.
and you're trying to get it out the way real fast so you can move on to the next thing, because you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
learned this, now I'm ready to learn the next thing because
Yeah.
I just learned this. Imagine if I build on this. It's like your mind just keeps going and keeps
Yeah.
building. It's like
Yeah.
it's a gift and a curse, and
Yeah.
it leads me into my next question. Um, Reflecting on your journey, what are some of the struggles you faced in juggling many different pursuits, and how have you overcome them?
That's a great question, man. Like one of the things that I struggled with, and I don't say I struggle with as much anymore. It's just coming to grips. Is it right for me to be so multifaceted? And I know from looking in from out, it sounds weird, but when you hear a lot of successful people, a lot of them are like, you got to focus on just one thing. And like, I think that's what works for them. A lot of I do admit that the most entrepreneurs, they tend to focus on one company and build from that. But for me, like I've noticed that I get bored really easily. So instead of just focusing on one thing, I might focus on one thing for a day, and then the next day I might focus on another thing, and that kind of helps me be creative. Uh, for me personally. And so yeah, that was one of my struggles. But talking to I have just like you, I have a podcast, and one of the things I love about my podcast is that I get unique people on, and I get to have interesting introspective conversations, and honestly stuff that I'm going through, like they wouldn't know, but I'll just ask them, and they give me like great advice on it. So my podcast has been a great platform for me to learn and to also help my audience understand more about life and internal struggles.
Yeah, I like that share. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty excited to ask that question because I remember when I was just starting out on my entrepreneurial path, and you were one of the ones that call, how you do so many things, like you're not, like basically saying I'm not focused in my career, and I was just like, this, I am focused. You don't realize that, like, I'm working with LED lighting, I'm working on indoor farms, I'm working
Yeah,
with this cannabis company. This is all agriculture at the end of the day. So it's like I'm in the
yeah,
same field, but to you it may look like a bunch of different fields, but to me it was all part of where I'm at now.
yeah.
Putting all that together, and being able to have this many opportunities in the agricultural space. Yeah.
Yeah, and back then I also wasn't too aware of my ADHD tendencies. And honestly, I didn't even know you had ADHD. I just learned about that. And now, like, your ability to do so many things and your desire to want to work on things makes a lot of sense. And for me, one of the things that like I'm learning too is like I'm a hard worker, but this whole thing about you have to work 8 hours straight to like for whatever reason, you can get a lot done in 2 to 4 hours of just hyper focusing, and that gives you a lot of time to do other stuff. And I've kind of noticed I put myself in positions to like work 2 to 4 hours instead of just working 8 hours straight, and that kind of gives me time to do a bunch of different things. Like it only takes me 2 hours to make a YouTube video if you just hyper focus. And it only takes me like about an hour and a half to 2 hours to upload and edit a podcast. If you just hyper focus, so it kind of allows you to allocate your time effectively if you do it the right way.
That's true. That's true. So my next question is, what strategies do you use to maintain balance and peace amidst your busy and varied schedule?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question, man. Oftentimes, I know it's simple, but I would say two things that really help me maintain my peace is I pray every day. I pray in the mornings, and I've recently been strengthening my relationship with God, and it's been a great journey. And daily prayer helps me maintain my peace. Another thing that helps me maintain my peace is just going out for walks, as simple as that may be. Going out for walks and just being grateful for everything I have, and then also listening to music. As a DJ, I love music. I play music all the time, and I can't explain it. But anytime I play that right music, whether it's like R&B, Afro beats, it just puts me in like a better mood. So yeah.
Yeah, I just had a guest on DJ, not DJ, but Nurse Blue, who was talking about musicology and just like the frequencies that like kind of put you in the right space and the atmospheres. And it seems like you've tapped into something similar without even knowing.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Like every morning, I like to wake up. I give thanks to the Most High and just. But I thank you for another opportunity because
Yeah.
some people aren't waking up,
Yeah.
and thank you for the ability to stand up on my own 2 feet, the strength,
Mhm.
and to do that, because there's some people that can't do that. Some people that are bound in their wheelchair.
Mhm.
And it's just having gratitude and, starting on a good foot, and like setting my foundation and God before I walk into the world, because we all know the world's chaotic, but
Yeah.
God is a good place to find peace, and also nature. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Working
agree.
in the agricultural industry, being in the fields is a great place to be. The sun, the smell of the plants, some of the sounds of the birds, and then also sometimes you just throw in your music, and now you got your
Yeah.
music flowing and you're vibing out.
Mhm.
So yeah, I definitely see a lot of synergies and kind of your start to your day and in mind, because I feel like it's a good way to set the tone for the day.
Yeah.
So my next question to you is: do you see any connections or synergies between the different fields you are involved in? If so, how many? I mean, how do they complement each other?
Yeah, man. Great question, man. And that's why I'm as I'm getting older, for me, I'm embracing the fact that I'm multifaceted. I'm not running away from it anymore. And one of the things that I'm so big on wisdom. I constantly chase wisdom. I read the Bible nearly every day on the weekdays to gain more wisdom. And I feel like as I do different things and I have different experiences, it helps me to understand people better. And I feel like with all the activities that I do, like I mentioned before, I'm just dealing with people. And essentially I'm learning customer service and what makes people happy. Why do they choose to trust you with their business? What, why, how to, offer good services and essentially serve people. So I would say everything that complements me, whether I'm working as a pharmacist and giving advice about medicine or talking to people about sickle cell disease and sharing my experience or playing music in a bunch of crowds. I think all of that, like I'm serving people and I'm recognizing what they might need at that particular time, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good share. I appreciate your share on that one. Um,
Yeah.
you always got to find the synergies and the things you're doing, just so that you feel like you're not building in a bunch of places and you're just scattered. It's like you're building on top of things,
Yes.
creating a solid foundation, and then building on top of that, and then so that you can, at the end of the day, you see that your career is just going up and you're not
Yeah.
going sideways. You're just being productive. So
Yeah.
my next question to you is, sorry,
Yeah. No problem, man.
let's get into your podcast,
Sure.
Ike's Inspiration. What sparked Ike's Inspiration?
Man, that's a great question, man. So I used to have an Instagram blog called Music for Inspiration, and it was a great blog. During the pandemic, it was actually going viral all the time. Like it was getting millions of views. People like Omarion would share it. Dame Dash shared it. PNB Rock followed me, and I was gaining a lot of traction. But and it was a lot. It was a lot of the content was on hip hop artists and shedding them in like a more positive, inspiring light. But honestly, even though I was going viral and I was getting all these Instagram likes and whatnot, it didn't feel that real to me. It didn't feel fulfilling for whatever the reason. And I know when you're at your hardest, that's kind of when you want to go the most. But I didn't feel like I was making the impact I wanted to make. And also for hip hop, like I kind of, even though I'm a huge hip hop fan, I can talk music all day. I was getting a bit tired with the tedious uh, it's always the same conversations like rape, gang violence, like all the street stuff and the ego, and it was kind of I was it was too much for me. So I ended up transitioning to making my page called Ike's Inspiration because I'm not just interested in music. I'm interested in spirituality. I'm interested in God. I'm interested in sickle cell. I'm interested in real estate, and I'm just a very curious person, as you know. So I wanted to create a platform where I can still inspire people, but also explore my own curiosity. And so that's where the podcast came from. And honestly, I've been thinking about this podcast for like 3 years, and it's always been in my head, but I never actually like put time to execute it. And once I haven't regretted it. I've been able to have incredible guests on, like people who are multi-millionaire real estate investors. I've had DJs on, creators on, and just all types of people from all facets of life where I can just learn from. And it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I feel like as content creators, we all go through a phase of kind of giving the people of doing what we think the people giving the people what we think they want, um,
Yeah,
and then ultimately getting to a point where we give them what we truly are passionate about, and
yeah,
ultimately that is truly what the people want. Because in the beginning, like yeah, you're hitting those millions of views, but like how many relationships are you building off of that?
yeah,
Like it's like I with my platform, I want to build relationships with the individuals that I watch. Like hit
yeah,
me in the messages, email me, contact me on my Instagram, contact
yeah.
me off my my YouTube channel. Wherever you can reach me, contact me because if you got a story, I low key want to share it because I feel like there's something we can learn from everybody's successful story. Um,
Yeah. And
and yeah, what were you going to say?
not my fault. And when I was going through that, like you hit it on the nail. Like even though I was going super viral, it didn't feel real. Like on Instagram, I would just get a bunch of fire emojis. I was like, yeah, fire, like for whatever reason, and that didn't feel like a substantial impact. Like
Yeah.
or like and I knew what to post to go viral, but what I didn't feel like it was kind of like a mixture of like drama but like inspiration, and like I didn't want to keep doing that just to go viral. Like I can like post like the Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, frame it in like a inspiring way, and that would go viral, but I was kind of tired of having to adhere to this formula that the IG algorithm made. So I'm like, all right, let me just do my own thing, man. you know
Yeah, once you start doing that, you start to realize that that's what the algorithm really is. It's to
yeah,
find new trends. And the
yeah,
new trends aren't put out unless you start to create those new trends.
yeah,
So that's part of my next question. What new trend are you trying to set with your social media platforms? I know you have Ike's Inspiration, and you
yeah,
also have your other platform with Sickle Cell. Like,
yeah.
what are the trends you're trying to set with those two?
Great question, man. So I'll start off with my sickle cell one. With the sickle cell one, my goal on that is to be the biggest YouTuber on sickle cell disease. I recently got to 1,000 subscribers, so it's growing well, and
Congratulations.
thank you, man. It's been great, and over time, when you post consistently, you start to see the growth. And on that, I simply want to create a platform that I wish I had when I was a little kid. I was sick with sickle cell all the time, and I was going through so many crises. I've had near death experiences, and I would say sickle cell has been the hardest thing I've ever been through. So to kind of create a platform for that, for people who are currently going through the disease and battling it, I wanted to start a trend of making it cool to talk about sickle cell disease and having people open up. There's an actual stigma with people with sickle cell. People don't talk about it. Shit, I didn't even disclose that I had sickle cell publicly until like my mid 20s, honestly, because I didn't feel proud to talk about it. So I kind of want to make a platform that inspires other people to talk about sickle cell and give them hope that they too can be healthy, and ultimately make it the channel so big that one day I become the biggest platform on sickle cell. Because if you go on YouTube right now and type in sickle cell, there's like no sickle cell channel. It's like stuff, it's like videos from like 10, 11 years ago. So for me, I look at that as an opportunity for me to take over and put myself out there. you know?
Nice. It sounds like you're trying to find lanes
Yeah.
to fill and find solutions that people need.
Yes.
Sickle cell is very prevalent in the African community, and it seems like you're a great resource. You're a doctor, so
Yes.
you're a doctor and you're someone who has it, so you can talk
Yeah.
about it from two different aspects. It's kind of like you're your own solution in a way. It's like
Yeah.
you grew up to become the solution that you need as a kid, just as you said earlier. And
Yes.
that's one thing I really like about you. It's like you're always looking for solutions. You're not one that likes to complain a lot. You're like
Yeah.
you hear a problem, you're trying to look for a solution. That's kind of always how you've been, Mister
Yeah.
on the grind. And while you're on the grind, you
Appreciate
never would complain about like
that.
dealing with sickle cell, dealing with issues with school. You just got on the grind and figured out a solution. And I feel like that's a message that you've always shared.
Yeah.
And a piece of Ike's inspiration.
I appreciate that, bro. Like, yeah, I even on my sickle cell videos, I say the grind never stops, and that's something that I aim to live by, because I think we were put on this earth to lead by example, and to create for others, And so with my Ike's Inspirations podcast, the goal that I have for that is to ultimately inspire people to be the best versions of themselves, and to expose people to different avenues and stories of success. So whether you can see success from what it means to be a real estate investor, or what it means to be a success as a psychotherapist, or success as a DJ. I'm just so interested in different success stories, especially for Black people, that I want to put that out there more. So yeah.
Give the keys. Yeah, you're basically giving the keys to success out there
Sure.
through your podcast. So with that being said, you've been having some great guests on your podcast.
Yeah.
And can you share a memorable moment or a guest from your podcast that has had significant impact on you or your listener?
Sure. The first person that comes to mind is I had a guy named Billy Garrett on. Billy Garrett is the first NBA player with sickle cell disease. So it was super cool because, first of all, I love the NBA. I'm a huge basketball fan, and that was just cool to interview someone from the NBA. And then on top of that, he like merged with my passion for sickle cell disease. So that was my longest and one of my most interesting podcasts. And we just talked about everything from basketball to sickle cell to spirituality. And honestly, time flew, and that podcast was really long. But at that point, I just was having a lot of fun. And what that podcast taught me was like, there are so many people who would be grateful to be on your platform, especially once you get it up and running. And it told me like, yo, if I can get an NBA player on my podcast, like who else can I get? And so that podcast gave me a lot of confidence in terms of the type of people I can get on my show.
Yeah, I like that. Definitely been seeing that type of traction with myself as well. Some of the stories that I hear, in my field of farming, agriculture, cultivating. I love to network. And one of the reasons why I love to network is because, I get to be around a bunch of other intelligent people that have gone through many ups and downs and have many solutions. So I
Yeah.
like to interview them, hear questions, because a lot of the questions I'm asking, I'm interested in hearing too myself, because I'm going to go out and use some of the information that I heard.
Mm.
So with that being said, that leads into my next question. Is there um, any piece of advice that you've heard, or any bit of information that you've heard through your interviews on your podcast that has stuck with you and that maybe you started to implement in your daily life?
Mm.
Or even in your podcast?
Yeah. The biggest one that I've received, and it was actually from a college friend. His name is Adioye. He's currently a pharmacist and a U.S. politician, which is super dope. And he said something that stood out to me. He said, "You can never outwork relationships." And for me, one of the things I love about podcasting is like what you said. It gives you ability to network and just meet incredible people, and like you're building your relationship building skills, like you're getting better at that. Talking to people doesn't feel as hard as it may have been, and it ultimately like grows your confidence. So from podcasting, I'm cherishing relationships a lot more, and I just enjoy how different people can add to your creativity in life. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely take a piece of everything that those people bring to your life through that network.
Hmm.
So with that being said, that's your podcast. I
Thank
want to
you.
hear more about your DJing, because I feel like DJing is the one thing that, that sticks out.
Yeah.
Doctors got doctor. A podcast makes sense. We're in 2024. Like a lot of people are starting podcasts, but DJing, like where did DJing come from?
Yeah, man, that's a good question, man. DJing, I've been you know me, man. Like I've always loved music, man. Like I play music like literally all the time. And I've as I started to speak to people, I started to realize like I'm low key a DJ, like naturally for other people. And when I'm in the car, like when we're in college, like I would usually take the aux or something, and I've noticed like I enjoyed seeing other people like my music, and I would do my best to make sure that I'm playing music they would like, not really music that I like, but ultimately any music I'm playing for them is something I would already play for myself. And so to see other people like enjoying the music I play brings me joy. And that's something that's pretty much what a DJ does. Like, they play
Yeah.
music for the crowd, and if the crowd is happy, like, then you're happy. And so it aligned with me, and it made so much sense. And honestly, the thing I love about DJing is like DJing and listening to music is something I do already. So the DJing part makes it more of a social thing where I get to meet people in like a creative way while making some change and money, and it allows me to live life a lot more creatively, which I love. So yeah, DJing has been awesome, man. It's when it comes to, am I doing it for the money? No, I'm doing it because of the fun it brings into my life, and how I can bring joy to others.
Wow, it sounds like you've taken a passion and a pastime and turned
Yeah,
it into a type of career, which is amazing. Because a lot of
yeah,
people don't think it's like DJing. That's something that most people like do in college or later years, and then a club or something like that. But it's like this guy's a doctor, man. You don't need to make
yeah.
any extra money doing DJing. Like, but it's like you've taken something that you're super passionate about and turned it into a career. And I remember in college, one thing I used to always get bummed about, I think I find like a new hot song and I come straight to, "Oh, I already heard that." I'm like,
Oh
I'm like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, I'm gonna get
yeah.
bro with a couple of hot songs, and then, eventually I started getting you with Love and a couple people. I still stand on the claim that I put you on to the Russell.
Yeah. Honestly, I personally already knew about the Russell, but I will say you recently put me
See,
on
I
to Nems.
told you.
You put me on,
I know.
you put me on to Nems. I'll give you that, and I listen to Nems. He's
Now,
fire.
what about
Yeah.
the Migos? Can I at least get the Migos?
I'll give yeah, I'll give it
Let me get the Migos. Let me get
yeah,
something. See, I
I'll
told
give
you,
it
this guy is hard. This guy knows all the music, man.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
hard
man.
to slip anything
I give,
past him. Go get it.
but that's one thing you and I always connected. We always like love music, and music, man. Music is a beautiful thing, man. It's like what it can do for other people, and like how it just puts you in a state of joy. Like it's something that a lot of creations and art can't do. Music lights a fire in your spirit, and I love what it does for myself, and I hope to do it for more people as a DJ. You know.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did recently, a lot of you guys don't know, me and Ike did a podcast way back when we were in college, and I took some time. I believe it was like a week or two ago to listen to it. And in listening to it, I just couldn't help but see like the growth that you've
Mm.
had, even in how you speak. Like there's more power in how you speak. That you're less timid. Um, can you talk about some of the growth that has come from all being in all these endeavors and how it may have
Yeah.
changed you for the better?
I appreciate it, and thank you for the compliment. It means a lot to me. Yeah, like it's interesting, man. Like I think a lot of that growth I would attribute it to just living life to the fullest, to the best of my ability. And one of that is definitely the podcast. You said I sound a lot more timid and less timid, and I sound a lot more confident. And when you just speak to so many successful people on like a weekly basis, it it increases your confidence, and it just makes you so much more. It changes the way you think about yourself. And then I don't know. I feel like every time I get a new guest on my podcast, it's like it confirms that it validates me in a way that makes me more confident that I'm on the right path. After every single podcast I do, everyone's like, "Yo, man, you asked incredible questions. That podcast was awesome. Like, yo, like you're gonna do great, man." And that gives me more confidence to continue my podcasting and serving others. And then as I start to gain success in other things, not just podcasting, I'm like, is even more reaffirming. Like I recently did a DJ gig like 2 weeks ago, and then I didn't even ask for a review, but the woman who booked me gave me like an awesome 5-star review, and he's like, man, this guy was great. His music was awesome. Like, man, like he's a gentleman too. Like, and I don't need the validation, but it's great to know that like I'm doing a great service for people. So that's where my
Yeah.
confidence comes from.
Yeah, because I remember in early stages, I was trying to get you into podcasting because I remember there was a guy by the name of Hafiz. Like you guys had different styles of confidence. You guys both Nigerian, but there was just something about Hafiz that was just like something. He reminds me of Ike so much, and it's like, and then just thinking about like when we be one-on-one and the way that we would talk to one another, you always have a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, man, if you could just snap out of that timid, shy side, bro, I'm telling you, bro, like be the person that you were with just me and you. Like the world needs to see that. That was kind of like the message I was trying to say, but at the time, I guess I didn't have the words. Because I don't want you to be like him. I just wanted you to be the Ike that I knew
and
when we were together.
And I appreciate that, bro, because you saw my ability to be a podcaster before I even really recognized it in myself. And I think when you were saying like, yo, you're like Hafiz, I think what you're really saying is like, yo, you could start your own podcast, man. And because he had his own podcast and he was doing pretty well. And I took with that and I ran with that. And I definitely see what you're saying. I see a lot of similarities in our ability to speak and our keen desire to lead. Like I think not everybody has that desire, but for some reason, God has put that desire in my heart. Like I always think about leadership. Maybe because I'm the oldest brother in my family, or maybe because my dad was a great leader. But being a leader for me is very important, and I'm working harder and harder each day to put myself in more leadership positions where I'm not compromising myself, but I'm also serving others.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the differences that you and Hafiz have in your content, Hafiz was more about the relationships between men and women and business forward thinking. But there's something about you that's more like has a wider spectrum. It's like you're trying to touch the ears of almost everyone.
Yes.
Like you're in the health scene, you're in DJing, you're in Ice Inspiration, and this podcast talks to a bunch of different people from so many aspects of life. So that was kind of what I seen in you. And is that part of your mission with your podcast? Are you trying to reach as many people as possible, or is there a certain type of people that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, no. Ultimately, man, I just want to reach out to people who will resonate most with me. So if my podcast doesn't get millions of views, like I'm cool with that, as long as I know that the people who do watch my podcast are gaining a lot of knowledge and a lot of impact. Like they feel a lot more impactful. Unlike when I was doing my blog and I was getting millions of views, I don't feel like the level of impact was there. I'd rather get like 100 views and impact, like have a strong impact in them, than get 1 million views and like you're just scrolling through your content without really taking in what you're saying. So yeah, but ultimately, like I would love to have a lot more views. Like, I can't really control that, but I've noticed that as I post more and more, my audience is slowly growing. And so, yeah, man, I definitely want to talk about multiple things, man. I've noticed when I start my podcast and when I talk to people about business, personally, I get really bored. And also, I can kind of tell like the people talking about business don't get that excited about it. At least most of the people that I've had on, like because I feel like they do it all the time and they talk about it. But when you found something outside of business that like makes them a human, like people tend to really love that. So I try to do the best to get the human side out of people. And if that has to do with talking about business, that's great too. But I also love talking about God and spirituality and getting into like the core of why a man does what he does or why a woman does what she does, because that's the most interesting thing to me.
Yeah, I like that shit. One of the things I noticed with you, Ike, is you are a major reflection of your family.
Mm.
You know, and I've just noticed this through like the more conversations that we had. You know,
Mm-hmm.
your dad was in radio, your mom's in the healthcare industry.
Yeah.
I know your brother before you was in the podcasting.
Yeah.
And it seems like, and you've always just been into music yourself. So I see how you kind of like fuse, like
Yeah.
you are your last name. It's like you embody all the people in your family. And I was just wondering, do you ever notice that?
Yo, bro, I really appreciate that, man. When I recently started my podcast, like, I've been posting it, and I went back to Boston. I'm currently in Atlanta, right? But I went back to Boston to go visit my family. And my dad was talking to me. He's like, yo, like, I'm a fan of your podcast. And that meant a lot to me because he's very African and stern, and they technically don't give compliments. But then he says something that I would never forget. He's like, yo, I used to be a radio host. And then he said, you're carrying on the family legacy. I was like, wow, like, that's kind of deep. I never even looked at. I started this podcast to inspire people and to serve people. But then when he said that to me, he's like, now I have another purpose. Like I'm really carrying out the Aquarius Crew name, that's my last name for those who don't know. And so like it's like, man, it's not even just like I'm not even just doing this anymore just for myself, but there is a family legacy aspect to it too as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the legacy is it's something I always focus on because as I got older, I didn't realize how much I was I took a little piece of all my family members that like, helped raise me and I was raised with because I would always look at them and see what they were good at and like try to practice it myself.
Yeah.
My sister's a really big business owner in Boston with Black-owned Boston, Boston. My mom's always been an influential community member. My dad was a lion leader. Like everyone that was around him always felt safe and like he had a structure, he had a code, and everyone loved the peace that he brought with him being around. And then there's like the spirituality comes from my granddad and my grandma. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the big love for family comes from my grandma. Like my grandma's, she was Taylor. My mom was also a seamstress and creative. So like I get my creative side from there. Um, and it's kind of some of the speaking that comes from my granddad too, because he was a pastor. So it was just like as I was seeing all these individuals doing different things. At the time, I might not have been interested in what they were doing, but I never really picked up on how I was picking up on little seeds that they were dropping
Yeah.
and letting them flourish inside of me.
Yeah, that's an
Um,
interesting observation,
yeah,
man, that you made. And I'm glad that you made it because I haven't thought about it too. But like you said, like for my dad was the president of his church, and he did a lot of public speaking, and he was a radio host. He was also a DJ, and something I didn't realize until I started DJing. He told me stories of how he used to DJ. Then, like you mentioned, my younger brother did his own YouTube channel, and I picked that up from him. And it's interesting to see that. And I think one of the things about being multifaceted that I appreciate is you actually become a lot more relatable to people because you have so many different lens. Like I can talk to a doctor about medicine, and I can talk to a DJ about the up and coming hottest music, and I can talk to YouTubers about editing and script and like whatnot. Like, and you kind of become a lot more you have a lot more perspective and you can be a lot more relatable to different people, which is cool.
Yeah, it definitely is cool. So I always like to end off the podcast with the seed of inspiration. I want to
Sure.
thank you for coming through. But the seed of inspiration is usually a word of advice to the listeners and the viewers. Do you have a
Mhm.
seed of inspiration for us to give to the viewers?
Yeah. My seed of inspiration is to be the change you want to see in the world. So, if there's something that you're going through, instead of complaining about it, be the solution. And as I've started to speak to so many people on my podcast, I've realized that a lot of them have found purpose from their deepest pain. And whatever was their most problematic thing at the time, they were able to transform that story and make it more productive and actually like bless them in the future, whether it's going from being homeless and having no home to now becoming a real estate investor, or for me, like having sickle cell disease and suffering from it, and now I actually have a YouTube channel on sickle cell disease. Like my seed of inspiration is to be the change you want to see in the world.
Well, I appreciate you for sharing that one. And before we go, do you have any social media platforms people can reach you on? Where can they go view you, listen to your content, or anything up and coming with your podcast?
Yeah. So uh, you can follow me on my YouTube channels. I have two YouTube channels. One of them is called Sickle Cell with Dr. O. If you want to learn more about sickle cell and how to treat that and live and what it's like to live with that. And then if you're interested in my podcast, you can go on YouTube and type in Ike Inspiration, and it should pop up on YouTube. And you can find me there. And then also feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is IKES Inspiration. And so you can reach out to me there, and I would gladly talk to you if you're a friend of Jared or you're a listener of the podcast.
All right, thank you for that. And thank you for your time, man. This has been a great podcast, man. It's always good catching up with you,
Yeah.
hearing about the many different things that you got going on, and ultimately how you're juggling all this. I want this podcast to be an inspiration to individuals, that are starting out in the entrepreneurial field, because we start from somewhere, but sometimes we feel like we're doing things that's not making sense. But if you listen to individuals and you find out little tips and tricks like Ike has given today, like the structure, the inspiration, doing something you're passionate about. The whole mission of what you're doing starts to come together. And you did a great job of doing that today. I appreciate
Thank
you
you.
for coming through.
Yeah. And
This has
thank you
been,
for my fault.
yeah, what were you
No,
saying? Sorry about that.
I know, I just wanted to thank you, man, for having me on. And I'm just super excited to see your journey and your podcast. Like, I've already started my podcast, but I don't personally know that many podcasters myself. So to see you start your own podcast is going to inspire me to continue pushing forward. Like every time you post on YouTube, I'm like, cool, man. Like it's a reminder for me to keep pushing forward. So I love it. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, this has been Cultivating Conversations. Thank you for coming through for the conversation. And we're out. Bye for now.
Bye, y'all.